Nathan Coulter sat on his bundled possessions in the snow. His 3 children pressed against him, silent with cold. The landlord had locked the door 10 minutes ago. Christmas bells rang somewhere in town, mocking them. Emma, 8 years old, clutched the wooden horse Nathan had carved last winter. Samuel, 6, buried his face in Nathan's coat. Baby Grace whimpered in his arms, too cold to cry properly. The afternoon light was fading. Nathan counted their money again. $3.40. Not enough for a room. Not enough for anything. His metalsmith tools lay scattered around them like broken promises. The shop had failed 6 months after Martha died. He'd tried to keep working, tried to provide, but grief made him careless. Burned orders, missed deadlines, customers lost. The debts piled up faster than he could pay them. Now they had nothing. Main Street emptied as families rushed home for Christmas Eve. Shop windows glowed warm behind frost. Nathan watched people hurry past without looking at them. A man with debts was invisible in a frontier town. A failed man with children was worse. "Papa," Emma whispered, "where will we sleep tonight?" Nathan had no answer. His throat closed around words that wouldn't help anyway. The temperature was dropping. They had maybe 2 hours before full darkness, before cold that could kill. Samuel's shivering had turned violent. Grace's lips looked blue. Nathan stood, Grace tight against his chest. "We'll find something," he said. The lie tasted like ashes. Every door in this town was closed to him. He'd already begged at the church. The pastor had given him $2 and said the shelter was full. $2. Gone now to pay for their last week's room. The lamplighters began their rounds. Golden light spilled from windows onto blue snow. Each lit lamp represented warmth his children didn't have. Nathan felt something break inside his chest. Not his heart that had broken when Martha died. Something else. His pride. Maybe. His last pretense that he could fix this alone. Emma took Samuel's hand. "It's okay, Sam," she murmured. "Papa will find us somewhere." The faith in her voice destroyed him. He gathered their belongings, such as they were. 2 bags of clothes, his tools, a blanket, the carved horse Emma refused to leave behind. They started walking, though Nathan didn't know where, just away from the locked door, away from the place that had rejected them. Snow fell harder. Darkness crept closer. Nathan counted the lit windows as they passed. Families inside, warm and safe. Children around Christmas trees. Everything his children deserved and didn't have. He'd failed them. Failed Martha. Failed everyone who'd ever trusted him. The cold bit through his coat. Grace's whimpering stopped. That scared him more than crying would have. "Papa," Samuel said through chattering teeth, "I can't feel my feet." Nathan stopped walking. They stood in the middle of Main Street, snowflakes catching lamplight. Christmas Eve settling over a town that had no room for them. He looked at his children's faces red with cold, hope draining from their eyes. This was how people froze to death. This was how families ended, not with violence or drama, just cold, just darkness, just locked doors and empty pockets and the slow, quiet failure of a father who couldn't save them. Harriet Monroe stepped onto her porch to shake snow from the doormat. The evening ritual, performed for no one since her boys died. The boarding house stood 3 stories tall behind her, full of empty rooms. She'd kept it clean, kept it running, but mostly it echoed. She looked up from the mat and saw them. A man and 3 children, sitting on bundled possessions across the street. The tableau struck her like a fist. The man held a baby close. 2 older children huddled against him. Snow gathered on their shoulders. They weren't moving, just sitting, waiting for something that wasn't coming. Harriet's breath caught. She knew that look. She'd seen it in her mirror 3 years ago, after scarlet fever took Thomas and William. That empty-eyed desperation, that bone-deep cold that had nothing to do with weather. The man's hands, she could see them even from here, were strong but empty. A workman's hands with no work. The children's faces turned up to him, waiting for answers he didn't have. Harriet set down the mat. She crossed the street before she decided to. Snow crunched under her boots. The man looked up as she approached. His eyes were dark with defeat. "I have rooms," Harriet said. Her voice came out quieter than she'd intended. The man stiffened. "We don't take handouts." Harriet studied him. Pride. Stubborn and fierce. She understood that too. After her boys died, people had offered charity. She'd refused it all. Working herself near to death to keep the boarding house running. Pride was sometimes all that kept you standing. "Then work for it," she said firmly. "My boarding house needs repairs. Broken stairs, loose shutters, a dozen things I can't manage alone." She looked at his tools scattered in the snow, metalsmith equipment. Good quality, well maintained despite everything. This man knew his trade. "You work," she continued. "Your family has shelter and meals, fair exchange." The man's jaw tightened. He wanted to refuse. She could see it in every line of his body, but the baby in his arms made a small sound. The little girl was crying silently, tears freezing on her cheeks. The boy shook so hard his teeth rattled. "Fair exchange," the man repeated slowly. He stood, adjusting the baby's weight, extended his hand. Harriet shook it. His grip was strong, calloused, desperate. "Nathan Coulter," he said. "Harriet Monroe." The little girl looked up at Harriet with hope so raw it hurt to see. "Do you really have rooms?" "I do," Harriet said gently. "Warm ones." "With beds," the boy whispered. "With beds, and supper in an hour." Nathan's throat worked. He couldn't seem to speak. Harriet turned to the children instead. "Let's get you inside," she said. "You can warm up while your father brings the tools." The little girl took her brother's hand. They stood together, unsteady from cold. Harriet reached down and steadied the girl. The child's hand was ice. "I'm Emma," the girl said. "This is Samuel, and that's Grace." "Beautiful names," Harriet murmured. "Come on now, let's get you warm." She led them across the street toward the boarding house. Light spilled from its windows, golden and beckoning. Behind her, she heard Nathan gathering their belongings. His movements were slow, as if he couldn't quite believe this was real. Harriet understood that too. After years of doors closing, an open one felt like a trap. But she meant what she'd said. She needed help. The house was too big for one woman, too empty, too full of echoes that sounded like her boy's laughter. If she listened too hard, maybe work would fill the silence. Maybe this broken family could occupy rooms that had stood vacant too long. Or maybe, Harriet thought as Emma leaned against her, she was just lonely enough to do something foolish. Either way, she was doing it. The boarding house swallowed them in warmth. Harriet showed them to 2 adjoining rooms on the 2nd floor. 6 rooms total in the house, but only 2 were occupied by long-term boarders. Mr. Chen lived on the 1st floor. Mrs. Davison traveled for business, rarely home. The rest stood empty. "Washroom is at the hall's end," Harriet said. "Supper at 6. Come down when you're ready." She left them to settle in. Nathan stood in the doorway, holding Grace, while Emma and Samuel explored cautiously. 2 beds in each room. Clean quilts. A lamp. A wash basin. Simple, but more than they'd had in months. Emma touched the quilt like she was afraid it might vanish. "Papa, is this really ours?" "For now," Nathan said carefully. He couldn't let them hope too much. Couldn't let them attach to something that might disappear. He'd learned that lesson when Martha died. Nothing was permanent, nothing was safe. But Samuel was already bouncing on the bed, and Emma was smiling, and Grace had stopped whimpering. Nathan set the baby down on the quilt. She grabbed his finger and held on. "It's warm here," Samuel said, wonder in his voice. The boarding house had good heat, solid walls. Nathan recognized quality work when he saw it. Someone had built this place to last. But even good work needed maintenance. He'd seen the loose porch railing, the cracked window frame. Honest work for honest shelter. He could do that. Downstairs at supper. Harriet served simple stew. Mr. Chen, elderly and quiet, sat at the table. He nodded at the children, smiled at something Samuel said. The boys' laughter startled Nathan. He couldn't remember the last time he'd heard it. The stairs creak badly. Harriet said to Nathan, "Third and 7th step. And the shutters on the east side are loose." "I can fix that," Nathan said. "There's more. A list, if you want to see it." She brought out paper covered in neat handwriting. Weeks of work. Maybe months. Nathan studied the list, then looked at Harriet. She met his eyes steadily. She'd invented half these jobs. He realized, creating work so his pride would accept her help. He should have been angry. Instead, he felt something loosen in his chest. "I'll start tomorrow," he said quietly. "The workshop is in the carriage house. Tools there if you need them." Emma had fallen asleep at the table, head pillowed on her arms. The warmth and food had knocked her out. Samuel was barely awake, blinking slowly. Grace sat in Nathan's lap, finally content. "Let's get them to bed," Harriet said gently. Nathan carried Emma upstairs. Harriet guided Samuel. They tucked the children in, Emma and Grace in one bed, Samuel in another. The children didn't stir. They were warm, fed, safe, for tonight. At least, in the hallway. Nathan turned to Harriet. Why help us, you don't know me?" Harriet's expression shifted. For a moment, she looked very far away. "I know enough." She moved toward the stairs, then paused. Nathan followed her gaze to a closed door at the hall's end. A faded wreath hung there, brittle with age. Something about it felt sacred, untouchable. "That room stays closed," Harriet said softly. Nathan didn't ask why. He recognized grief when he saw it. The closed door was a shrine, a keeping place. He had his own version Martha's wedding ring, still in his pocket. Things too painful to release. Things too precious to forget. "Understood," he said. Harriet nodded and descended the stairs. Nathan stood in the hallway a moment longer, looking at the closed door with its ancient wreath, whatever lay behind it, whatever loss Harriet carried. She understood his situation because she'd lived her own version of it. Two people haunted by ghosts, he thought. Two people trying to survive in a house too big for one, too empty for comfort. Maybe they could help each other. Or maybe this would all fall apart by spring. Either way, tonight his children were warm. Tonight they had beds and full stomachs. Tonight they had hope, even if Nathan didn't trust it. He went to his own room and lay awake, listening to his children breathe. The sound was the most beautiful thing he'd heard in months. Nathan started work the next morning. He examined the stairs first, testing each step, identifying the problems. The 3rd and 7th steps weren't just creaky, they were starting to split. He'd need to reinforce them from underneath. The work steadied him. His hands knew what to do even when his mind didn't. Measure, cut, fit, nail. The rhythm of it was prayer. Emma appeared on the landing above him. "Can I help?" "You can hand me nails." Nathan said. She sat on the step beside him, holding the nail box solemnly. Her presence was comforting. Martha used to sit with him like this in the shop, back when the world made sense. From the kitchen came other sounds. Harriet's voice, low and patient. Samuel's higher voice asking questions. Baby Grace babbling. The sounds of life in a house that had been too quiet. "Miss Harriet is teaching me to bake," Emma said. "She knows 17 kinds of cookies." That's so. She said I'm a natural. Pride flickered in Emma's voice. She'd had so little to be proud of lately. Nathan's throat tightened. Your mama was a good baker, too, he said. I remember. Emma was quiet a moment. Do you think Mama would like Miss Harriet? The question caught him sideways. I think so. Why, just wondering. She handed him another nail. Her small fingers were careful, deliberate. She was trying so hard to be helpful, to earn their keep here, 8 years old and already carrying burdens too heavy. Emma, Nathan said, you don't have to work. You're a child. I want to help. Miss Harriet is nice. She was. Nathan had noticed. The way Harriet moved through the boarding house, efficient, capable, but lonely. She'd made extra cookies yesterday just because Samuel mentioned liking them. She'd found toys in the attic for Grace to play with. Small kindnesses. Offered quietly. Nathan finished the stairs by midday. He moved to the shutters next. The east side of the house took the worst wind. Several shutters hung crooked, banging in gusts. He climbed the ladder, Emma steadying it below. Inside, through the window, he could see Harriet showing Samuel how to fold napkins. The boy's face was scrunched in concentration. Harriet smiled, not a big smile, but real. It transformed her face, made her look younger. Nathan looked away quickly. By evening, his shoulders ached pleasantly. Honest work. Honestly done. At supper, Mr. Chen commented on the silent stares. Much better, he said. Been meaning to fix those myself. Nathan's a skilled tradesman, Harriet said. Metalsmith, Nathan clarified. But I know carpentry. Jack of all trades, Mrs. Davison said, having returned from her travels. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s. Valuable in a frontier town. Nathan shrugged. Valuable hadn't saved his shop, hadn't kept his family housed, but it kept them here now. Kept them warm and fed. Maybe that was enough. After supper, Harriet served coffee on the porch. Nathan joined her, Grace sleeping against his shoulder. The night was cold but clear. Stars scattered across black sky. The shutters are solid now, Nathan said. Thank you. Like, what's next on the list? The furnace, Harriet said. It works, but not well. Gets cold upstairs at night. I'll look at it tomorrow. They sat in silence. It wasn't uncomfortable. Two people who'd learned that not everything needed words. Your children are good kids, Harriet said finally. They've been through a lot. So have you. Nathan didn't answer. Harriet didn't push. She just sat there, coffee cup warming her hands, looking out at the snow-covered street. Nathan felt something ease in his chest. Some tension he'd been carrying so long he'd forgotten it was there. Maybe this could work. Maybe they could stay through winter, build up some money, move on in spring, give the children a few months of stability. Or maybe, a small voice whispered, they could stay longer. Nathan pushed the thought away. He'd learned not to hope. The days blurred into routine. Nathan worked through Harriet's list steadily. Emma helped in the kitchen. Samuel followed Mr. Chen around like a puppy, learning checkers and card games. Grace crawled through rooms that rang with her laughter. The boarding house woke up. That was the only way Nathan could describe it. As if the building itself had been sleeping and was now stretching back to life. He noticed other things too. How Harriet's face softened when Emma called her Miss Harriet. How she kept cookies on hand because Samuel asked for them. How she sang to Grace while folding laundry, old lullabies that made Nathan's chest ache. She was good with children, natural. Emma had started holding Harriet's hand without thinking about it. Samuel showed Harriet his checker victories before showing Nathan. Even Grace reached for Harriet when she cried. It should have bothered him. Should have felt like replacement, but it didn't. It felt like healing. One afternoon, Emma paused outside the closed door with its wreath. Miss Harriet, she said carefully. What's in there? Harriet was carrying linens. She stopped, frozen. Nathan, working on the hall window, went still. "That was my son's room," Harriet said quietly. "You have sons." "I did. Thomas and William, 7 and 5. Harriet's voice went careful, distant. "Scarlet fever took them 3 years ago." Emma's eyes went wide. "Both of them?" "Yes." "Were you sad?" "Every day since." Emma considered this with a child's solemn wisdom. "Papa was sad when Mama died. He still is sometimes." Harriet's eyes found Nathan's. Something passed between them. Recognition. Kinship in grief. "Would you like to see?" Harriet asked suddenly. She set down the linens. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the door. Nathan put down his tools and followed. He felt pulled, compelled. The room was perfect, untouched. 2 small beds with quilts tucked tight. Wooden toys on shelves, school slates on a desk, everything waiting for boys who would never return. Harriet stood in the doorway. She didn't go in, just looked. "I couldn't change anything," she whispered. "Couldn't bear to." Emma slipped her hand into Harriet's. "You were a good mama." Harriet made a sound like breaking. Not a sob, but close. "I tried to be—" "You still are," Emma said simply. "You're a mama to us now." The tears came then. Harriet covered her face, shoulders shaking. Nathan moved without thinking. Put his hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. Emma pressed against her side. Samuel, appearing from nowhere, wrapped his arms around her waist. "I'm sorry," Harriet gasped. "I shouldn't—" "It's okay," Nathan said. His own voice was rough. "Grief doesn't go away. You just learn to carry it. Does it get easier? No, but you get stronger." Harriet looked at him. Her eyes were red, devastated. But something else too. Understanding. They'd both walked this road. Both knew the weight of empty rooms and silent nights. "Martha died 2 years ago," Nathan said. The words came easier than expected. "Childbirth. Grace lived. Martha didn't. I thought I'd died too. Kept going through the motions. But I was just a ghost." "What changed?" "Nothing. I just kept walking." He looked at his children. "Had to. For them." "Your shop?" "Failed because I couldn't focus. Grief made me careless. Lost customers. Lost money. Lost everything." Nathan's jaw tightened. "I failed them. You're here. They're safe. That's not failing." "Feels like it." Harriet touched his arm. "You're the bravest man I know. Nathan Coulter. Keeping your family together. Accepting help." "That takes more courage than any man running from his pain." Nathan couldn't speak. The words landed too close to wounds he'd been protecting. They stood together in front of the closed room. 2 broken people and 3 children. Emma leaned against Harriet. Samuel held her hand. Grace, in Nathan's arms, reached for Harriet's hair. "You don't have to keep it closed," Nathan said finally. "The boys wouldn't want you locked in grief." "I don't know how to let them go." "You don't. You just make room for more." He gestured to Emma and Samuel. "They need you. Not as replacement, just as who you are." Harriet looked at the children. Something shifted in her expression, softened and strengthened at once. She didn't close the door when they left. Left it open just a crack. A small act. A beginning. That night, Nathan lay awake thinking about closed doors and open hearts, about grief carried too long alone, about a widow who'd made space for his broken family, and about how dangerous hope felt when you'd learned not to trust it. Nathan went to the general store for supplies. He needed nails, wood screws, Sandpaper. The store was busy with mid-morning shoppers. He gathered what he needed, stood in line to pay. Behind him, two women were talking. Their voices carried. Did you hear that metalsmith living at Harriet Monroe's boarding house? The one who lost everything got evicted on Christmas Eve. That's him, living off poor Harriet now. Her and those 3 children. Nathan's jaw clenched. He kept his eyes forward. Shameful, the first woman said. Taking advantage of a lonely widow like that. She's so desperate for family she'll take anyone. Even a charity case who can't provide for his own. The words struck like fists. Nathan paid, took his supplies, left without looking back. But the damage was done. The whispers followed him down the street, echoed in his head. Charity case. Taking advantage, can't provide. All true. Wasn't it he was living in Harriet's house? Eating her food. His children dependent on her kindness. The work he did was just pretense. She'd made up half those jobs to justify keeping them. He was exactly what those women said. A failure. A burden. Nathan returned to the boarding house with his supplies and his shame. He couldn't look at Harriet during lunch, couldn't bear the kindness in her eyes. Every cookie she gave Samuel felt like judgment. Every time she held Grace felt like proof he couldn't care for his own. That evening, he found Harriet in the parlor. She was mending by lamplight. The scene was peaceful, domestic. It made everything worse. I'll be leaving after Christmas, Nathan said abruptly. Harriet's needle stopped. Leaving, railroad expansion 2 towns over. They're hiring. Good wages. I see. Her voice went carefully flat. And the children. They'll come with me. Of course. Of course. Harriet set down her mending. Her hands were very steady. You've done good work here. Nathan. The house is better for it. The formality stung worse than anger would have. Nathan wanted her to argue, to ask him to stay. But she just sat there, dignified and distant. I'll finish the current repairs. He said, Thank you. He left before he could say something stupid. Upstairs, Emma was waiting. She'd heard everything. Her face was stricken. Papa, no. We can't leave. We can't stay here forever, Emma. Why not? We're happy here. Miss Harriet needs us. Miss Harriet is being kind. That's different from needing us. You're wrong. Emma's voice shook. She does need us, and we need her. Don't you see? I see that we've imposed long enough. You're running away again. The accusation hit home. Nathan's temper flared. Pack your things, he said more harshly than he meant. We leave after Christmas. Emma fled to her room, crying. Samuel followed, confused and frightened. Nathan stood alone in the hallway, hands shaking with shame and anger and self-loathing. The closed door was shut again. He didn't remember Harriet closing it, but it was firmly latched. The wreath looked accusing, downstairs. He heard nothing. No crying. No breaking dishes. Just silence. Harriet's grief was too practiced for dramatics. Nathan went to his room and stared at the ceiling. He was doing the right thing. Had to be. Better to leave now than get more attached. More dependent. Better to go before they became truly desperate. But Emma's words haunted him. You're running away again. Was he? Or was he protecting them from the inevitable pain of imposed charity? From the judgment of women, who'd whisper about them forever? He didn't know anymore. Outside, snow began falling. The boarding house that had felt warm for weeks suddenly felt cold. Winter reasserted itself, creeping through the walls, filling empty spaces. Nathan had done that. Broken what had been carefully building. The failure tasted familiar. He'd had practice. Christmas Eve came again, 1 year since the eviction. Nathan sat in his room, listening to Emma cry in the next room. Her sobs were muffled, trying to be quiet. Samuel made no sound, but Nathan heard the absence where laughter should be. Grace fussed in her crib. She sensed the tension, the wrongness. Nathan had destroyed this, in trying to protect them from judgment, from charity, from his own inadequacy. He'd stolen their joy. Emma had been happy here. They all had been. And he'd ended it because of pride. He picked up the iron key he'd forged for Harriet's front door. He'd made it weeks ago, meaning to install it. But he'd kept adding detailed scroll work, decorative flourishes, turning function into art, making it beautiful because it mattered. Because she mattered. The truth sat heavy in his chest. He wasn't running from charity. He was running from the terrifying possibility of love, of building something new, of risking his heart again after Martha. Emma was right. He was running away. Downstairs. The house was silent. Nathan descended carefully. Found the parlor dark. Harriet sat alone in shadows. Christmas tree unlit. She decorated it with the children last week. Now it stood dark, ornaments catching faint moonlight. "Harriet," he started. "Don't," she said quietly. "If you're going, just go. Don't make it harder." Nathan moved closer, sat across from her. "I heard women talking at the store, said I was taking advantage of you, that you were desperate. And you believed them. I am taking advantage." "No," Harriet said fiercely. "You gave me back my life. This house was a tomb. I was just existing, preserving death. Your children brought laughter back, Emma's smile, Samuel's questions, Grace's joy." Her voice broke. "You gave me purpose again. I gave you burden. You gave me family." The words hung between them. Nathan's throat closed. "I'm terrified," he admitted, "of needing you, of letting my children need you. What if I fail again? What if you don't?" Harriet leaned forward. "What if this works? What if we could be family? Nathan, real family. I can't provide. Can't give you. I don't want your money. I want your presence, your strength, your children's laughter." She stood, crossed to him. "I want you to stay because you want to, not because you need to. Because this house became home, because we fit." Nathan looked up at her, in the darkness. Her face was soft with hope and fear. She was risking as much as he was. Her heart, broken by loss, opening again. "The key," he said roughly. He held it out. "I made this for your front door. The lock was broken." Harriet took it. Her fingers traced the scrollwork. "This is beautiful. Because it's not just a door, it's your home. Our home. If you'll let it be." He swallowed hard. "I'm asking you to take a chance on a failed metalsmith and 3 broken children." "You're not failed. You're healing. They're not broken. They're loved." Harriet smiled through tears. "And I'm asking you to take a chance on a widow who locked herself away for 3 years. Emma says her mama would like you." Nathan said, "She's right. Martha would. My boys would like your children." They sat in the dark together, 2 people learning to hope again. Outside, church bells began ringing. Midnight, Christmas morning. "Stay," Harriet whispered. "Yes," Nathan said. The word felt like coming home. Christmas morning broke cold and bright. Nathan found Harriet already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. They moved around each other carefully, like people learning new steps. "Harriet," Nathan said. "Nathan," she said at the same time. They stopped, almost smiled. Nathan held out the key again. "This is for you, for the front door. The lock was broken, so I made a new one. Harriet took it, studying the scrollwork he'd added. Vines and flowers wrapped around iron, delicate and strong. You made this beautiful. Because it matters. You opened this door when every other door in town was closed. You gave us shelter when we had nothing. His voice roughened. I was too proud to see that accepting help isn't weakness. It's trust. Nathan. Wait. He pulled out a second piece from his pocket. Small ironwork. Carefully forged. 3 small figures children standing around a taller figure. A woman. Formed into a decorative hook. For your son's room. To hang their coats. Harriet's hands trembled as she took it. The metal was warm from his pocket. She understood immediately what he was offering. Not to erase them. Nathan said, to honor them. To let the room breathe again. Let it be part of life, not separate from it. You fixed more than my house, Harriet whispered. Tears tracked down her face. You fixed my broken heart. You mended mine too. Nathan stepped closer. My children needed a mother. I needed you. Harriet. Not your house or your charity. You. Then stay, she said. Stay and make this house a home. Stay and let me love your children. Stay and let me love you. The declaration hung between them, brave and terrifying. Nathan reached for her hands. They were strong, scarred from work, beautiful. I'm staying, he said. Footsteps on the stairs made them turn. Emma stood in the doorway, Samuel behind her, both in night clothes. Emma's face bloomed with joy. We're staying. Nathan nodded, throat too tight for words. Emma rushed forward, crashed into Harriet's arms. Samuel followed. Harriet held them. Crying and laughing at once, Grace appeared, carried by Mr. Chen, who'd heard the commotion. The old man was smiling knowingly. Merry Christmas, he said, handing the baby over. Grace went to Harriet's arms naturally. The baby patted her tears. Curious. Harriet kissed her head, then looked at Nathan over the children's heads. The love in her eyes was unmistakable. Merry Christmas, Nathan said softly. Later. After breakfast. After gifts and laughter. Nathan installed the iron hook in the boys' room. Emma helped, holding it steady while he worked. The room was still quiet, still sacred. But it felt different now. Open, breathing. What were they like? Emma asked. Thomas and William. Thomas loved books, Harriet said from the doorway. William loved rocks. Brought home pockets full of them. Samuel collects things too, Emma said. Maybe William would have liked him. I think he would have. They stood together in the room that had been closed so long. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm and bright. The hook gleamed on the wall. Waiting. We could put their things on the shelf in the parlor, Emma suggested. So everyone can see them. Remember them. Harriet smiled. That's a lovely idea. They spent the afternoon doing just that, moving toys carefully downstairs, arranging them on a special shelf, making space for memory without making a shrine. The boys' room remained a boys' room, but now it could be for visiting children, or storage, or whatever life needed. Life, not death preserved. That evening. Nathan and Harriet sat on the porch. The children played inside with Mr. Chen and Mrs. Davison. Christmas lights glowed warm in windows up and down the street. Marry me, Nathan said quietly. Harriet turned to him, surprised. Make it official, he continued. Make us family in truth. I don't have much to offer, but I can fix things, and I can love you, and I can promise to never run away again. Yes? Harriet said simply. She leaned against him. Nathan put his arm around her shoulders. They sat together watching snowfall, two people who'd found each other in darkness and chosen light. Inside. Emma's laughter rang out. Samuel's voice joined it. Grace babbled happily. The sounds of family, real and whole. The eviction notice that had started this story was ashes now, burned in the kitchen stove days ago. In its place, belonging home. Love forged in winter's coldest night. Spring came early. Nathan established his forge in Harriet's carriage house. Clearing out years of accumulated storage, word spread about his skill. Orders trickled in hinges, nails, decorative ironwork. Not enough to make him rich, but enough to contribute, to provide. Emma thrived. She helped Harriet run the boarding house, learning to manage accounts and welcome guests. Her smile came easy now, frequent. She'd found her place. Samuel spent mornings with Mr. Chen, learning chess and philosophy. Afternoons he followed Nathan in the forge, asking endless questions about metalwork. The boy had steady hands and patience. Maybe someday he'd take over the trade. Grace took her first real steps in April, toddling from Nathan to Harriet and back again. She called them both by name now. Papa. Mama. The word made Harriet's eyes shine every time. The boarding house filled with life. New boarders came, drawn by good cooking and warm atmosphere. Mrs. Davison became like family, doting on the children. Mr. Chen taught Samuel to play violin. The house rang with music and voices. In May, Nathan and Harriet planted a garden together. Emma marked rows with string. Samuel watered with a careful hand. Grace sat in the dirt, playing with worms. They worked in sunshine, building something that would grow. The tomatoes go here, Harriet said, marking a spot. And beans along the fence. Nathan added. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind married people developed. Because they would marry. The date was set for June. Emma had appointed herself wedding planner. She'd sketched dress designs, planned flowers, organized everything with fierce determination. Samuel would stand beside Nathan. Grace would scatter petals. If she could walk well enough by then, the town gossips had fallen silent. Seeing the obvious truth, this was family, real and chosen and strong. Mrs. Henderson, one of the women from the store, had actually apologized. Nathan had accepted graciously, though Harriet's cool nod suggested she remembered better. One evening, Nathan went to the boys' room. It was used for storage now, but respectfully. The beds were made, the toys were downstairs on their shelf. The room felt peaceful, not haunted. He hung a small framed photograph Harriet had given him, Thomas and William, 7 and 5, standing with their mother. The boys looked mischievous, happy. Harriet looked young, unbroken by loss. They would have liked your children, Harriet said from the doorway. They would have been friends. They still are, in a way. She came to stand beside him. Through us. Through memory becoming present. Nathan kissed her temple. You're good at this. At what? Loving. Letting love happen again. So are you, she said. You just needed to believe it. June arrived with wildflowers and warm winds. The wedding was small, held in the boarding house parlor. Emma wore a dress Harriet had sewn. Samuel stood solemn and proud beside his father. Grace toddled between them, scattering petals enthusiastically. Mr. Chen presided, having gotten licensed just for this occasion. Mrs. Davison cried through the entire ceremony. Half the town attended, crowded into the parlor and spilling onto the porch. Nathan's hands shook as he took Harriet's. His vows were simple. I promise to stay, to build with you, to love your memory and your present, to make this house a home. Harriet's vows were equally simple. I promise to welcome, to hold your family as mine, to honor your past and build your future, to be your home. They kissed while their children cheered. Emma hugged them both. Samuel grinned. Grace clapped, not understanding but happy anyway. The boarding house glowed with lamplight as evening fell. Music drifted from open windows. Laughter rang through rooms that had been silent too long. The garden grew outside, promising harvest. Later, after guests left, after children slept, Nathan and Harriet stood on the porch. The night was warm and full of stars. Down the street, other houses showed their own lights. But this house, their house, felt brightest. "Remember last Christmas," Nathan said. "Every day. We were frozen, broken. We were." Harriet agreed. "Both of us. And now," she smiled, "now we're home." Nathan pulled her close, somewhere inside. Emma called out in her sleep. Samuel's answering murmur sounded content. Grace made soft baby sounds, dreaming her baby dreams. Family sounds, home sounds. Some houses were built with nails and timber, Nathan thought. Others were built with open doors and willing hearts. The Coulter family, his and Harriet's, Emma's and Samuel's and Grace's. Thomas's and William's in memory had found both, and in doing so, found everything. The eviction notice that began their story was long burned. In its place stood something stronger than iron, more enduring than wood. A family forged in winter's coldest night, born in spring's first light. They'd offered each other shelter when shelter was needed most, and discovered that home wasn't a place at all. It was this moment, these people, this love, hard-won and carefully tended. Home was wherever they chose to build it together, and they had built it well.